You wake up in the morning, and the first thought that comes to your mind isn't about what you're going to do today, but about how you're going to get through another day. It's not a clear sadness. It's not a pain you can name or explain to someone. It's something deeper and more frightening. It's the feeling that you're just going through the motions, like an actor playing a part in a play that has lost all meaning. You look in the mirror and see someone who is technically alive, breathing, functioning, but on the inside feels such a vast emptiness that it seems to suck away all energy and will. It's in those moments when you're in the middle of a conversation with friends or family and suddenly catch yourself thinking, "What am I even doing here? Why does this matter? Why does anything matter?" And you force a smile, go through the expected motions, say the words people want to hear, but inside there's a silent scream questioning the purpose of it all. At night, when you finally lie down instead of finding rest, you find that same emptiness waiting for you in the darkness, whispering that tomorrow will be exactly like today, and that you're trapped in this endless cycle of existing without truly living. You've tried everything: new hobbies, changes in routine, even pretending everything is fine, but nothing fills this existential hole that seems to grow larger each day. And the worst part is the loneliness of this experience, because when you try to explain it to someone, you see in their eyes that they don't understand, that to them you're just being dramatic or pessimistic, when in reality you're grappling with the most fundamental and terrifying question of human existence. What do you do when life completely loses its meaning? What happens when you simply wish to disappear, not necessarily to die, but to cease to exist in this empty mechanical form of life? Is there anything more frightening than continuing to live without knowing why? And it is precisely here, at this point of apparent hopelessness with no way out, that Viktor Frankl's discoveries become not just relevant, but absolutely vital. This man who survived the unimaginable horrors of the Nazi concentration camps, who lost his wife, his parents, his brother, who was reduced to a number and treated as less than human, discovered something that most people never find even in conditions of comfort and safety. He discovered the profound truth about why some people want to vanish from the world, and more importantly, he discovered the real, proven path to transforming that existential emptiness into something meaningful. And I'm not talking about empty motivational phrases or forced optimism. I'm talking about a deep scientific and philosophical understanding of the nature of human suffering and how the lack of meaning is, in fact, the most fundamental problem our generation faces. Frankl realized something that the traditional psychology of his time completely ignored: that human beings are not primarily motivated by the pursuit of pleasure, as Freud believed, nor by the pursuit of power, as Adler proposed, but by the search for meaning. And when this search is frustrated, when a person cannot find meaning in their existence, they develop what Frankl called an existential vacuum, a condition he identified as the mass neurosis of our time. But here's the part that will completely change your perspective on your own suffering. Frankl discovered that this emptiness, this desire to disappear, is not a sign of weakness or mental illness in the traditional sense. It is, in fact, an absolutely natural and even healthy response to a life that has lost its meaning. Think about it for a moment. When you feel like you want to disappear from the world, what you're truly feeling isn't a pathology to be medicated or suppressed, but rather the most honest manifestation of your humanity, reacting to the absence of something essential: purpose. Frankl saw this with crystal clarity in the concentration camps. He observed that the prisoners who survived were not necessarily the physically strongest, nor the youngest, nor the healthiest. They were those who had some reason to live, some meaning awaiting them in the future. He tells the story of two men who confessed to him that they had suicidal thoughts. Frankl didn't try to convince them that life was beautiful or that they should be grateful for what they had. Instead, he asked a completely different question: why don't you commit suicide? And their answers revealed exactly what kept them alive. One of them had a child waiting for him in another country. The other was a scientist who was in the middle of a series of books that only he could finish. These men had something unique that only they could accomplish, a responsibility that only they could fulfill, and this realization kept them alive, even in the worst imaginable conditions. This understanding brings us to the core of the matter. You want to disappear not because life is inherently meaningless, but because you haven't yet discovered the specific meaning your life is asking of you right now. And here's Frankl's most revolutionary discovery. The meaning of life isn't something you create or invent arbitrarily. It's something you discover. It's something that's already there, waiting to be found. Like a question life is posing specifically to you, and only you can answer with your own existence. Frankl developed what he called logotherapy, a meaning-centered form of psychotherapy, and he tested it not just in comfortable offices, but in the most brutal laboratory humanity has ever known, the Nazi extermination camps. And it worked. It kept people alive when everything around them conspired for their death. But there's something even deeper here that needs to be understood. Frankl realized that the meaning of life differs from person to person, from moment to moment. There's no universal meaning that serves everyone. What gives your life meaning today might be entirely different from what gives it meaning tomorrow. And that's why so many traditional solutions fail. They try to offer a ready-made meaning, a universal formula, when in reality each of us needs to discover our own unique meaning. And here's the most important paradox. The more you directly pursue happiness or try to force meaning into your life, the more it eludes you. Frankl called this hyperintention, the excessive attempt to achieve something that can only be achieved as a byproduct of dedicating yourself to something larger than yourself. Think about how this directly applies to your desire to disappear. You can't just decide your life will have meaning. You can't convince yourself through positive affirmations or forced optimistic thinking. Meaning needs to be found through genuine engagement with the world, through responding to the concrete demands life places before you. Frankl identified 3 main pathways through which we can discover meaning, and understanding these pathways can literally save your life. The first pathway is through creating or accomplishing something meaningful through some work or deed. I'm not necessarily talking about grand achievements or public recognition. I'm talking about any activity in which you put your uniqueness, your singular personal stamp on the world. It could be creating something with your hands, solving a problem no one else can solve the way you can, or simply doing your daily work with a quality and care that reflects who you truly are. The second pathway is through experiencing something or encountering someone. This could be the experience of beauty in nature or art, or it could be genuine love for another person. Frankl was emphatic in saying that to love someone means to see that person in their deepest essence, in their unique possibilities. And in doing so, you not only find meaning, but you help that other person realize those possibilities. But it's the third pathway that is perhaps the most revolutionary and most relevant to someone who wishes to disappear. It's the pathway of meaning through suffering. Frankl wasn't romanticizing suffering. He made it clear that we should always try to eliminate suffering when possible. But when we are faced with unavoidable suffering, when we are in a situation we cannot change, we still have the ultimate freedom to choose our attitude toward it. In the concentration camps, Frankl saw people who, even when everything had been taken from them, when they were literally starving and treated like animals, still maintained their human dignity through the attitude they chose to adopt. He tells of an elderly prisoner who would share his last piece of bread with others who were even hungrier, of people who would comfort others even when they themselves were suffering terribly. These individuals proved that there is a freedom no one can take away from you, the freedom to choose how you respond to what happens to you. And now I want to pause and really talk to you. I know many of you watching this video feel that weight of waking up every day without knowing exactly why you're living, feeling like it would be easier to just not exist. I really want to know, have you ever felt this emptiness so profound that it feels like nothing makes sense, not even the good things that happen, not even relationships, not even achievements? If yes, simply type in the comments, "I feel this deep emptiness." Nothing more is needed, and know that by doing so, you're not just validating your own experience, you're creating a safe space for dozens or perhaps hundreds of other people who feel exactly like you, but think they're alone in this. Your courage to speak about it in the comments might be exactly what someone else needs to see today, to know they aren't alone in this search for meaning. Often the simple awareness that others go through the same thing is the first step out of existential isolation, Let's create a community of genuine honesty and courage here. Now returning to what Frankl discovered. There's a specific technique he developed called paradoxical intention that can completely change your relationship with this desire to disappear. The logic is counterintuitive, but profoundly effective. When you desperately try not to feel something or not think about something, you actually intensify exactly what you're trying to avoid. Frankl realized that many neuroses are maintained and intensified by this struggle against them. So, he developed an approach where you intentionally desire exactly what you fear or want to avoid. It sounds crazy, but it works because it breaks the cycle of anticipatory anxiety that fuels the problem. Applied to the desire to disappear, this would mean confronting that desire directly, looking at it without trying to suppress it or feel ashamed of it, and asking, what is this desire really telling me? What's the deep message behind this urge to vanish? Often, what you'll discover is, it's not life itself you want to disappear, but a specific way of living that has become unsustainable. You want the feeling of being stuck in a mechanical, meaningless existence to disappear. You want the constant performance of pretending everything's okay to disappear. You want the loneliness of carrying these deep issues in silence to disappear. And when you see this clearly, the question completely shifts. It's no longer, how do I stop feeling this one, but rather, what in my life needs to die so something new and more authentic can be born? Carstens Frankl also developed the concept of self-transcendence, which is absolutely crucial for understanding how to break free from existential emptiness. The essence of human existence, he argued, lies in its self-transcendence. A human being is always reaching out for something or someone beyond themselves, be it a meaning to fulfill or another human being to find. The more a person forgets themselves by dedicating themselves to a cause or loving another person, the more human they become and the more they realize their own potential. The problem for someone who wants to disappear is often that this person is hyper-focused on themselves, not out of narcissism, but out of psychological survival needs. When you're drowning existentially, all your attention turns inward to your own pain. But this creates a vicious cycle. The more you focus on your own void, the larger it seems to become. The solution, paradoxically, is to find something outside yourself that is important enough to pull your focus away from your own misery. This doesn't mean denying your suffering or pretending it doesn't exist. It means finding something worth suffering for. Frankl often quoted Nietzsche, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." In the concentration camps, Frankl had a very concrete why. He wanted to survive, to rewrite a scientific manuscript that had been confiscated by the Nazis, and he wanted to find his wife again. These whys kept him alive when seemingly stronger men gave up and died. What's your why? Maybe you don't know it yet, and that's okay. But the question itself is a start, because it directs your attention outward, away from the void and toward the possibilities of the world. There's another aspect of Frankl's thinking that's vitally important: the idea that life never ceases to have meaning, under any circumstances. This isn't naive optimism. It's an assertion based on empirical observation of the most extreme conditions. Frankl saw that even when all external circumstances were absolutely horrific, when there was nothing good to expect in the surrounding environment, there was still the possibility of finding meaning through the attitude a person chose to adopt. He tells about a fellow prisoner who had a dream where he was told he would be liberated on a specific date. This man was full of hope and courage until that date. But when the day arrived and liberation didn't happen, he lost all hope and died shortly thereafter. Frankl explained this medically as a sudden drop in physical resistance caused by the loss of psychological tension. But the deeper lesson is that this man had placed the entire meaning of his existence in one specific future expectation. When that expectation failed, he had nothing left to hold on to. In contrast, those who found meaning not in when they would be liberated, but in how they lived each present day, in how they treated their fellow prisoners, in how they maintained their inner dignity, these were the ones who had the best chance of survival. Applying this to your situation, if the entire meaning of your life depends on achieving some specific future goal, on getting something you don't yet have, You're building your existence on an extremely fragile foundation, because you can never be absolutely certain you'll achieve that goal. And even if you do, you might find it doesn't fill the void as you'd hoped. Frankl is telling us something radically different. Meaning is available here and now in the way you choose to respond to this specific moment, regardless of circumstances. This understanding leads us to confront an uncomfortable but liberating truth. You are inescapably responsible for your own life. Not in the sense of blame, but in the sense of responding to the question that life is posing to you. Frankl used to say we shouldn't ask what the meaning of life is, but rather recognize that we are the ones being questioned by life. Every person at every moment is being questioned by life, and they can only answer life by responding with their own life. They can only answer by being responsible. This responsibility cannot be transferred to anyone else. No one can live your life for you. No one can discover your unique meaning for you. And that's precisely why simply disappearing isn't a real solution, because it doesn't resolve the fundamental question: what is the answer that only you can give to life? Think about how many times you've tried to run from that responsibility. How many times have you sought distractions, numbness, anything to avoid facing the question your life is asking? And the more you run, the larger the void becomes, because you are essentially running from yourself, running from your own essential humanity, which is defined by this capacity to respond freely. Frankl isn't saying it's easy. He's saying it's necessary. And he's proving through his own life and the lives of countless patients he treated that it's possible. If these ideas are resonating with you, if you feel like you've finally found someone who gets this search for genuine meaning, hit that subscribe button. Here, we dive into the thinking of Viktor Frankl and other philosophers who offer real answers to the existential void so many of us carry. You don't have to walk this path of self-discovery alone. This is a safe space to question, to seek, and to grow. Click subscribe and join this community of folks brave enough to face life's deepest questions. Now, let's explore something Frankl called the noetic dimension of human existence. Beyond the physical and psychological, there's a uniquely human dimension, the spiritual dimension. And I don't necessarily mean religious here, but in the sense of values, meaning, and purpose. It's in this dimension that your true freedom resides. Even when your body is imprisoned, even when your emotions are shattered, there's a core of spiritual freedom that no one can touch. Frankl saw this again and again in the camps. The Nazis could control every aspect of a prisoner's physical life. They could drive them to extreme emotional states of fear and despair. But they couldn't control what happened in this noetic dimension, this inner space where a person decides who they want to be in the face of suffering. And it's precisely in this dimension that you can find a way out of the desire to disappear. Because when you access this dimension, you realize you are more than your circumstances, more than your feelings, more than your thoughts. You are the consciousness that can observe all of that and choose a response. Frankl developed a technique called self-distancing, which is the human capacity to step back from ourselves, to get outside our immediate experience and look at it from the outside. When you're completely identified with your existential void, when you think, I am this empty, meaningless person, you're completely trapped in that experience. But when you can say, I am having the experience of existential emptiness right now, you've already created a space between you and the experience, a space where freedom can operate. Frankl also emphasized something that goes against much of what modern culture teaches us. Meaning can't be arbitrarily created by sheer will. You can't just decide something will have meaning for you. Meaning has an objective quality. It's there to be discovered, not invented. This means your task isn't to create meaning out of thin air, but to develop the sensitivity to perceive the meaning that already exists in every situation. Each moment carries a unique possibility for meaning that will never repeat in exactly the same way. And that possibility is waiting for you to notice it and to realize it. Think about how that changes everything. You're not alone having to invent reasons to live. The reasons are already there, embedded in the very fabric of life, waiting for you to discover them. Your job is to develop what Frankl called conscience, that intuitive capacity to sense what the specific situation is asking of you. And here's something profound. The meaning you discover can shift completely depending on the situation. There isn't one single meaning you need to find and cling to for the rest of your life. Each phase of life, each situation, each moment can reveal a different meaning. The person who lost their job might find meaning in using that time to reconnect with family or develop a new skill. The person who is ill might find meaning in how they face their illness and inspire others with their courage. The person who is alone might find meaning in developing a deeper relationship with themselves or in reaching out to others who are also lonely. Meaning is specific and concrete, never abstract and generic. There's a story Frankl tells that perfectly illustrates this. An elderly doctor came to Frankl in deep depression because he couldn't get over the death of his wife, who had passed away 2 years prior. Frankl didn't try to console him with platitudes or tell him that time would heal the pain. Instead, he asked a question. What would have happened if you had died first and your wife had survived? The doctor replied, For her it would have been terrible. She would have suffered so much. Frankl then said, You see that suffering was spared her, and you spared her that suffering, but now you have to pay for it by surviving and mourning her. The doctor didn't say anything, shook Frankl's hand and left. His suffering hadn't disappeared, but it now had meaning. He was suffering in place of his beloved wife. This example shows how the same suffering can be completely transformed when viewed through the lens of meaning. The doctor still felt the pain of loss, but now it had a purpose, a dignity, a significance that made it bearable. And this brings us to a crucial truth about the desire to disappear. Often, that desire isn't about wanting to die, but about wanting the meaningless suffering to end. If you could find profound meaning in your suffering, if you could see that it serves some greater purpose, it would become bearable, perhaps even transformative. Viktor Frankl observed that in modern society, there's what he termed a mass existential vacuum, an epidemic of meaninglessness. He attributed this to 2 primary factors. First, the instincts that traditionally guided human behavior have weakened. Unlike animals, we don't have a clear set of instincts telling us what to do. Second, the traditions that once told people what they ought to do have also faded. So, modern humans often don't know what they want to do. Sometimes they want to do what other people are doing, which leads to conformity. Other times, they do what other people want them to do, which leads to totalitarianism. But there's a third option Frankl offers, discovering what life is asking of you, listening to the unique demand each situation presents, and responding authentically based on your deepest values. This isn't conformity because you're not just following the crowd. And it's not totalitarianism because you're not blindly obeying external authorities. It's a free and responsible response to life. But it requires courage. It demands that you connect with your own inner conscience, your own values, your own uniqueness. And it requires that you be willing to be different, to forge your own path even when it doesn't align with others' expectations. For someone who wants to fade away, this might seem impossible. How can you find the courage to assert your uniqueness when you can barely muster the strength to get out of bed? But Frankl would argue that it's precisely because you're suffering so much that you need to find that meaning. Suffering without meaning is unbearable. Suffering with meaning can be not only bearable, but transformative. There's also the concept of noogenic neurosis that Frankl introduced. Unlike neuroses stemming from psychological conflicts or traumas, noogenic neuroses arise from the noetic dimension, the realm of values and meaning. They occur when a person can't find meaning in their life. And the solution isn't just traditional psychotherapy focused on resolving internal conflicts, but logotherapy focused on helping the person discover meaning. This means that if you're suffering because your life feels meaningless, you're not necessarily sick in the traditional medical sense. You're having an appropriate human reaction to a real existential situation, the absence of meaning. And the solution isn't to suppress the symptoms with medication, though that might sometimes be necessary as temporary support, but rather to directly confront the question of meaning. Ask yourself, what would make my life meaningful? What can only I contribute that no one else can? What possibilities are waiting for me to realize them? What responsibilities am I avoiding that could actually give me profound meaning if I embraced them? These aren't easy questions, and the answers won't come immediately. But the very act of asking these questions is already a movement in the right direction, already an acknowledgement that your life is asking something of you. Frankl had a very specific view on the relationship between happiness and meaning that contradicts much of contemporary culture. He argued that happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. It must follow as the unintended side effect of a person's dedication to a cause greater than themselves. The more you aim directly for happiness, the more you miss it. Happiness happens when you are absorbed in something meaningful, when you forget yourself in dedication to a cause or a person. This explains why so many people who have everything that's supposed to make them happy, all the material conditions for comfort and pleasure, still feel empty and want to disappear. They are chasing happiness directly, and therefore it always eludes them. What they need isn't more pleasure or comfort, but meaning, something worth living for and even suffering for. And when they find that, happiness comes as a natural byproduct, not as something consciously sought. If you leave a like on this video, you help these ideas reach more people who need them. Every like is a vote of confidence that this message deserves to be shared. Together we can create a wave of awareness about the importance of meaning in human life. So what does all of this mean for you, who wish to disappear from the world? It means that this desire, however painful, is actually a call. It's a call for you to awaken from a way of living that is inauthentic, that isn't yours. It's a signal that you can no longer live on autopilot, following scripts that others have written for you. It's a demand that you discover your own path, your own meaning. And yes, that's terrifying. It's far easier to disappear than to face the responsibility of creating your own authentic life. But Frankl shows us that you have the capacity to do so. The same inner freedom that survived Auschwitz is available to you now, in this moment. You can choose to see your current situation not as a condemnation but as an opportunity. I won't lie and say it will be easy. I won't promise that the emptiness will vanish overnight. But I can tell you, based on Frankl's work and the lives transformed by his ideas, that there is a real path out of this dark place you're in. And that path begins with a simple yet profound question. What is life asking of me now? Not what do I want, not what would be easy or pleasurable, but what is necessary, what only I can do, what will give meaning to this specific moment of my existence. And when you begin to answer that question honestly, when you start living in accordance with the meaning you discover, something extraordinary happens. The desire to disappear begins to transform into a desire to live fully, to realize the unique possibilities that only you can fulfill. And you realize that life, after all, was waiting for you the whole time, waiting for you to say yes to the responsibility and the freedom of being who you truly are. Let us know in the comments which of Frankl's ideas resonated with you the most in this video. Your reflection might illuminate the path for someone else watching.